All right. Hello, my name is Dustin Groen. I am a teacher associate here at Lifescape, and I will be doing your presentation today on strengthening behavior. Principles of behavior. There are several different principles, and we will start out by talking about the first one. Behavior occurs because of events that surround it. Everyone's behavior is influenced by the events that take place before and after the behavior. Your behavior, my behavior, the individual's behavior. So the event that takes place before the behavior is going to be the antecedent. The event that takes place after the behavior is going to be the consequence. An easy way to remember this is ABC. The A stands for antecedent, the B stands for behavior, and the C stands for consequence. Principle 2, behavior is influenced by its antecedents and its consequences. A consequence that strengthens or increases a behavior is positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is something that the student will work towards. So an example of that would be let's take you for an example. You show up to work every day. You're on time. You do what you need to do. The consequence for you coming to work every day is going to be you getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. The other type of consequence is punishment. This could include loss of points, loss of a preferred item, those types of things. But we're not going to talk about any of that today. We are going to talk about reinforcing and becoming reinforcing ourselves to the individual. So principle 3, all students can learn in a positively, carefully managed environment. All students have the ability to learn if the teacher and teaching assistants strive to establish and improve a positive school environment. Some points to remember when attempting to change behavior. The first one is to respect the right of the individual to be treated as an individual. Now, the next two, these are going to be done by the behavior therapist, but I want you to be aware of them. We need to respect the right of the student to receive the least restrictive behavioral interventions, and then respect the rights of the parents and legal guardians to understand and consent to those behavioral interventions. Specifying behavior. It's important to specify behavior, and the reasons for specifying the behavior are, 1, to pinpoint what actions are occurring. This allows us to define what the behavior is. 2, when you set clear expectations, you communicate clearly and precisely with them. They know exactly what it is we're expecting and asking them to do. And then to assess progress and communicate with others. By using specific language, it gives us the opportunity to assess behavior and communicate with parents and other members of the student's team effectively and in a nice uniform manner. So how do you specify that behavior? There's 5 steps. First one is defining the behavior. Second is when the behavior is to be weakened, we need to specify an appropriate alternative behavior to strengthen. Step 3, identify the antecedents and the consequences of the behavior. And then step 4, consider the factors that might be affecting the behavior. Step 5, determine the behavior's history. And we'll go into each one of those. So the first one is define the behavior. You want to identify the behavior by giving it a specific name and description. The actions in the behavior must be observable. You don't want to use vague or confusing terms. So if you put down aggression, well, what does that aggression look like? Is it hitting? Is it kicking? Is it biting, throwing objects at people? Those types of things. Be specific. When a behavior is weakened, specify an appropriate alternative behavior to strengthen. So here the example is, if a student engages in verbal aggression to gain someone's attention, we want to teach them appropriate ways to gain attention, tapping someone on the shoulder or raising their hand to gain that attention. We want to identify the antecedents and the consequences. before and after the behavior. You want to look to see if there's a pattern of certain antecedents happening before the behavior takes place. The same antecedent may or may not be occurring. You could have the same time of day, the same individuals being around. Maybe this behavior takes place every time it's pizza for lunch or whatever it may be. And then you also want to look at the consequences of the behavior as well. Are they gaining attention to a preferred staff? Are they gaining or are they escaping a task that they may want to get out of? Are they getting out of math class? Those types of things. Consider other factors that may be affecting the behavior. Time of day. Let's say every day at 1:30, or not at 1:30, at 11:30, Julio starts to get upset. Maybe Julio is hungry. Maybe he needs, a mid-morning snack at 9:30 or something, just to help him get through the morning until lunch. Could be an illness or other health problem, medication. Is Billy on a med that makes him hungry? Is Billy on a med that makes him thirsty or drowsy? Specific people, little Susie may not work well with a particular staff, or may clash with another individual in the classroom. Sleep patterns, did Hector not get enough sleep last night? Did he get too much sleep last night? Allergies. Allergies play a big part too. Certain times of year, the allergies are worse. Let's say Zeke is allergic to tree pollen, and in the spring, and there's a lot of tree pollen out there, you might see an increase in behavior. And then also misjudgment of a behavior of another student. I know a young man who perceives other students looking at him to be a hostile action. It's a threat, and they may just be looking at him to say hi, or maybe not even looking at him, but just in his general direction, and he perceives that to be hostile. So we want to determine the behavior's history. How long has this been going on? Has it increased, decreased in the last month? What has been done to change the behavior? And then what have other people found successful when this behavior has occurred? So assessing the behavior. Why assess behavior? Well, it gives us a chance to compare one student's behavior to another student's behavior to verify that it is indeed a problem. It can let us determine how much of a problem the behavior actually is. And then we can compare the level of the behavior before the intervention or at its baseline. And then we can look at the behavior during the intervention to see if the intervention is actually working or not, and if we need to tweak it a little bit to make things better. We can determine how the behavior is related to the antecedents and the consequences, and then we can meet the standards for accountability on the student's IEP as well. There's a couple different assessments. There's a formal and an informal assessment. Formal assessments are structured tests requiring standardized procedures. These are given by psychologists, teachers, other trained staff, those types of things. And we use those to determine a diagnosis, to see eligibility for services, those types of things. In informal assessments, these are used to identify harmful or disruptive behavior. There's 6 types, but we're only going to talk about the first 3. The behavioral assessment, note-taking, and then classroom observation. So behavioral assessments. A behavior checklist. This is just a list of behaviors that require someone to assess different behaviors and disruptions in the classroom. Most of the checklists have more than one behavior listed, and you just simply click yes or no if you see that behavior take place during the observation. The next is going to be behavior rating scales. This is just requiring the observer to mark how severe the behavior is or how frequently the behavior is taking place. And then a questionnaire. A lot of the questionnaires are very similar to the checklist or a rating scale, but with the questionnaire, you're trying to get an illicit response, or you're trying to elicit a response, from the person being interviewed. And then the interviewer is going to take that data. They're going to look to see if there's any trends. They're going to look to see if there's any information in that data to see if they can better treat or manage the behavior. Functional assessment. This is the process of identifying events in the environment that influence behaviors. You could use a checklist, a rating scale, interviews, those types of things. And then it's going to look at, too, the antecedents and the consequences that go along with that behavior. This is an essential tool in assisting instructors to implement effective behavioral interventions. Note-taking. This will help gather information on a student's performance or behavior. Two critical things, though, when you are taking notes. The first one is that they always need to be signed and dated, and then also they need to be objective and avoid judgment. You have no idea who's going to be reading these notes. It could be the student, it could be the parents, it could be the school district, members of the team, it could be a doctor. So only describe what you see and what you hear. Classroom observation. This is watching a student and recording the information about their behavior during a school activity. You're going to do this without an intervention in place. This is where you're going to get your behavior or your baseline data, and then after the intervention begins. And this allows us to see if the behavior is actually changing. It gives us a chance to see how much progress has been made and how far we are from reaching our goal. Graphing. Graphs are very beneficial. We can look at a graph to see any trends over time. You can tell very quickly if it's improving or if we still need to make improvement. And then there are three ways of collecting data. The first one is going to be frequency counting. This is just simply tallying the number of times a specific behavior occurs. So every time you see Johnny hit, you make a tally mark. And with this, the behavior must be defined, must be easily observable, must have a definitive beginning and ending, and then each occurrence must last about the same amount of time. Next is time sampling. This is a record of whether a behavior occurs at sample points of time. Again, it must be specified and defined. The behavior should be. Next, you want to have, it may have no discrete beginning or ending, or it may occur at such a high frequency that it's easier to record a time sample rather than a frequency. For an example, I have a student right now who is engaging in high rates of behavior. So his target behaviors are aggression, self-interest behavior, property destruction, and refusal. And we just mark every 10 minutes whether that behavior occurred or did not occur. So the steps for conducting a time sample are decide when to observe the behavior at selected points of time, and then either record a plus or a minus. Did the behavior occur during this time or did it not occur? Per opportunity recording. The observer determines whether a behavior occurs when the student has the opportunity to respond. This could be taking turns during a game, greeting someone in the hallway, making a choice in the lunchroom, those types of things. To observe and record the data, the following conditions must be met. Again, the behavior must be specified. And when I say behavior, I don't always mean a negative behavior. Behavior is anything that can be observed and measured. So taking notes would be a behavior, or giving a high five would be a behavior. So here, taking a turn during a game, that would be a positive behavior. And we're taking data on that positive behavior. The instructor must set the opportunity for the student to respond. And then when the opportunity is set, the observer determines whether the student's response was correct or incorrect. Did they take that turn? Did they make a choice in the lunchroom? Was it prompted? Was it not prompted? Those types of things. The steps for per opportunity recording include identifying the problem, record a correct or incorrect response, and then convert the data into percentage. Reinforcing behavior. Types of reinforcement or types of positive reinforcers. There's praise, and then that gets broken down into individual, group, pivot, and quiet, activities, materials, and tokens. And we'll get into those more specifically here in a moment. So praise, that's a naturally reinforcing consequence for most students. When you're talking about praise, it must be contingent upon behavior. So you want to praise appropriate and positive behaviors. Try to avoid praising inappropriate or negative behaviors. Also, it must be descriptive. So you want to describe what you are praising. So say, good job, Johnny, for doing your math worksheet. Good job, Susie, for standing quietly in line. Good job, Beth, for picking up your blocks, whatever it may be. Don't just say good job. They don't know if you're saying good job for them picking their nose, staring out the window, kicking someone under the table, standing in line appropriately, gaining attention, whatever it may be. So describe what it is you are praising. You also want to vary in content and style. You don't want to just say, hey, good job, good job, good job. Give them a knuckle bump. Give them a high five. Hey, that was awesome. Way to go. Nice job. Dude, you nailed it. Those types of things. When you're teaching a new skill, you want to reinforce every time that skill is displayed at the very beginning. And then once that skill becomes more and more mastered, you can start to fade out with your reinforcement. So let's say they are working on a program in school for identifying pronouns. So when they're first learning that skill, every time they identify a pronoun, you're going to reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. And then as that time goes on where they're better and better at it, it may be, from every time they reinforce or every time they identify that pronoun to maybe every third, every fifth, maybe just fade out. The reinforcement must be sincere and it must be enthusiastic. If you don't act sincere and genuine, they're going to see right through that, and it's not going to reinforce that positive behavior. It must fit age, gender, and culture. You don't want to be reinforcing a 20-year-old young man with watching Barney videos, those types of things. And then if done correctly, you yourself will become reinforcing to that individual. Just your presence alone can become reinforcing for them. Types of praise. You have your individual call out. This is a praise said directly to a particular individual. Carlos, nice job coming into school and hanging up your backpack today. A group call out. This would be a praise directed at a particular group or set of individuals. I love how everyone in the first 2 rows of the room have their pencils out and they're ready to learn. A pivot praise. This is praising using another individual's correct responding as a model for the individual engaged in an inappropriate behavior. So an example of this would be if you're working and you got little Johnny and little Susie and you're in science class and Susie's paying attention, she's raising her hand, and Johnny's looking out the window. You could say, hey, Susie, nice job raising your hand. I love how you are paying attention. And then as soon as Johnny starts to pay attention, you're going to say, hey, Johnny, thank you for paying attention, those types of things. And then also you have a quiet praise. This is praise said in close physical proximity to an individual. This could include pats on the back, smiles, approving nods, or a thumbs up from Tom Cruise and Top Gun, a little talk to me goose action. So activities can be used as reinforcers, but they should be age, gender, and culturally appropriate for the student. And then to gain access to that reinforcer, students must meet the criteria set to participate in the activity. So don't say, you have to have 5 days of, 300 points or more in order to go on the field trip, and then let them go with only 3 days because you're setting yourself up for failure in the future. And then try to allow the student access as soon as possible, but you want to be mindful that not all activities will be something that's immediately tangible. A field trip or going outside, if it's raining, those types of things. So be mindful of those. Another thing to remember too is that what you might find reinforcing, they might not find reinforcing. Here I have a picture of baseballs. I love baseball. Going to a baseball game would be highly reinforcing for me, but it might not be something that you would want to work for. So you want to find out what is actually reinforcing to them. Materials or items that are delivered contingently upon the displayment of appropriate behavior or behaviors. It could be a sticker, it could be a star, it could be a toy, it could be Skittles. The thing to remember with this is that the best time to change a reinforcer is when it still works. An example of this would be my daughter. She loves her superheroes, Iron Man, Captain America, the Hulk, Guardians of the Galaxy. And she asked me the other night if we could watch Guardians of the Galaxy, and I told her no. And she said, why? And I said, because I still like Guardians of the Galaxy, and if we watch it every night for a week straight, I'm not going to enjoy it anymore. So you want to switch things up while they're still working. Tokens, this represents other positive reinforcers delivered at a later point in time. So this could be points, stickers, stars. And with tokens, you're going to exchange them for that backup reinforcer. So points are going to be an immediate reinforcement. Hey, you earned 30 points. And at the end of the day or at noon or whenever their schedule says that they cash in their points, they can use those points to buy something, whether it's time on the computer or maybe a CD or candy bar or something along those lines. Tokens will lose its value unless it's frequently exchanged. So every day at the end of the day or twice a day, right before lunch and at the end of the day, those types of things. The value of the token must be worthwhile. You don't want it to be too little, but you also don't want it to be too large in value. And they need to be distributed fairly and consistently. And then once in place, the value of the token is non-negotiable. Emphasis should be placed on the desired behavior, not the number of tokens received. So it shouldn't be, hey, awesome, you earned 300 points today. It should be, hey, awesome, nice job getting your worksheets done, or nice job following your rules, those types of things. Applying interventions to strengthen behavior. So there's 5 guidelines for behavioral intervention. The first one, all intervention should include positive consequences for appropriate behaviors. So, like your paycheck, you want to be positive. Once an intervention has been applied, all instructors who work with that student should use the same intervention procedures. It needs to be exactly the same each and every time from everyone involved, or it's not going to work. Students should play a part in developing interventions. If you have their buy-in, it's going to be much more effective. Students' expectations must be achievable. Don't set the bar too high, but you also don't want to set it too low. I have high expectations for my students in my room, but they're not over the top. I don't expect them to be writing thesis papers. I don't expect them to be doing polynomials. I don't expect them to be, learning the elements of the periodic table, anything like that. All interventions must be applied to specific and well-defined behaviors as well. So steps in preparing intervention. First, you must select the most appropriate way to record the data for the behavior being monitored, and your behavior therapist is going to decide how they want to take that data. You're going to observe the behavior and record the results, and then graph that data before the intervention took place, so your baseline, and then with that you can look and see if the behavior is working. If it's not working, do we need to change things to make things better for the individual? Formal and informal interventions. Formal interventions can include punishment procedures. This needs to be part of their behavior plan, and each person working with that individual should be trained on the behavior plan. and your behavior therapist will go over that with you. Informal interventions can be agreements between the students and the staff. For example, if you get your math done early, you can have a few extra minutes on the computer, but you want to make sure that these are cleared with your teacher or whoever before implementing them. 5 informal interventions. The first one is debugging the environment. Then you have increasing alternative communication, increasing alternative ways to gain attention, delivering positive reinforcement in the absence of disruptive behavior, and then mixing easy, hard expectations. The first one is debugging the environment. Quite often, simple manipulations in the environment can lead to more stable functioning. Examples of this would be separating two students who don't always get along, or removing excess stimuli from the room. So let's say you have an individual who struggles with iPads. So you're going to put your iPads away. You're going to remove that excess stimuli. Increasing alternative communication. Several of our behaviors function as ways to communicate with others. When we work on decreasing a disruptive behavior, we should be replacing that with a new and acceptable behavior. If I only know how to communicate that I'm upset is by hitting my staff member, I need to be taught a new way to communicate my frustrations. So when implementing this technique, these steps should be followed. You want to ask the student what it is they're trying to communicate, if they are able to communicate that. With their help, agree on a way for them to appropriately convey what it is they are trying to communicate. When the student uses the new mode of communication, you want to grant that request and reinforce them for that. And then if the student does engage in that target behavior, you want to redirect them back to that new behavior that you are trying to teach them. Increase alternative ways to gain attention. Some students engage in maladaptive behaviors to gain attention. In this mode, the goal is to decrease the attention-seeking behavior and replace it with an appropriate behavior. So you want to reinforce that appropriate behavior when it is displayed. Again, you're going to meet with them if possible to find out what it is and why they are needing that attention. Agree on a way for them to appropriately gain your attention. And then when they gain your attention, appropriately provide your attention, or an alternative, thank you for asking nicely. I can't talk right now. Give me 2 minutes and then I will talk with you. And then you want to ignore the disruptive behavior. Delivering positive reinforcement or absence of disruptive behavior. An effective way to change disruptive behavior is to reinforce the absence of the disruptive behavior. Again, these steps are very similar with what we had before. Meet with them and define the behavior. Decide how the positive reinforcement will be delivered if the disruptive behavior does not occur. Do you deliver the reinforcer every 10 minutes since the last occurrence? Or you deliver the reinforcer every 10 minutes if the behavior was absent, those types of things. And that is all going to be decided by your behavior therapist as well. And if the student does engage in that disruptive behavior, you want to ignore that. Mixing easy and hard. Many times students feel items or tasks that are asked of them are too hard. You can mix easy and hard tasks to keep the student motivated. Again, you're going to meet with them, find out which tasks they deem to be difficult and which tasks they deem to be hard or easy. You're going to find out what's reinforcing for them and then describe how the student will receive the reinforcer after the hard task has been displayed. And if the student makes progress, change the schedule of reinforcement. So for example, let's say you're reinforcing for every hard task being completed, maybe you'll switch it up to every 2 hard tasks completed. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, you can email me. My name again is Dustin Groen. You can stop in Classroom 8, and I would be more than happy to assist you. Hopefully you found this presentation to be interesting and that you took something from it. Thank you.